Welcome back to the 72 Podcast. In the second episode of Series 2, via Zoom, Ted and Dean chat with pastor and author Greg Finke about the paradigm shift in our culture through the lens of living a life of discipleship. Here's their conversation with Pastor Greg.
4 months ago, talking to congregations about Zoom, they would have had zero idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the largest churches used it for some limited application, but most didn't. And now, you know, we got 75-year-olds clicking the Zoom link and tuning in and joining in. So,
well, I used to, probably about a month ago, when I would email someone, I would say, do you have time for a phone chat or maybe a Zoom call? And now I go, do you got time for a Zoom? Maybe a phone chat. It's switched around. And we've been using Zoom at CLBI for kind of staff training for 2 years, right, Dean? Yeah, but generally people are uncomfortable with it. Early on, there was all kinds of security issues, so people with it, don't use Zoom, and that's gone away because they know their market share, so they adjusted. What is the most common ask from a congregation? What do you sense that they're needing from you when they contact you about any form of training, any form of what is the need? What is the ask usually?
Well, whether they know it or not, the biggest need they have is the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Even churches that think they're missional aren't. They're just programmatically active in various
programmatically active. I like that.
Yeah, but they're still not really seeing the full potential of every person seeing their everyday lives as the mission field, right?
Daily mission trip.
So even the churches that have been pioneering a variety of quote unquote missional practices really have discipled their people to participate programmatically in the mission of God or in ministry to people different than themselves. And so that, whether they know it or not, and usually after just one conversation, they kind of start to realize, we have a lot of blue water out there that we haven't even tapped yet. So the very common process is, conversation one-on-one with a pastor or a group from the church, getting them into the book if they haven't already, because that's a lot of light bulbs that can come on and paradigm shift that happens that I don't have to be personally talking them through. And then usually it's somehow, a sermon series, a small group emphasis, because again, you got to process oh my gosh, that's what we're talking about, right? And then last but not least, we usually have to come in, especially if it's a very traditional kind of congregation, come in and do kind of what we call kick the tires, which is to come in and do a personal weekend where I'm influencing the influencers, and then doing a overall training, which really isn't a training. It's more of a overview of what would it look like to, live a life of mission, discipleship, and multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
That happens individually, but then how does the church support that congregationally? And then people can kind of have all these light bulbs that have been going on. Now they can kind of see it as a simple strategy. And oh my gosh, for heaven's sakes, that's already in the Bible, right?
Exactly.
So they're excited both from this is simple, it's practical, it's biblical, right? Now they're finally ready to go from consideration to implementation, right? But that whole process, there's all kinds of eager beaver leaders out there, including I would have been one of them, that would have wanted to have that happen in a matter of a sermon series and, a pretty zippy presentation on PowerPoint, and that everybody be ready. But really, it does take some time to process and catch on and see it, and then they're ready to have a training, which essentially goes over a familiar ground, but now they are different because now it's from inspiration, idea, insight to what's our plan for actually starting this? And
wanting to do the plan too.
Yeah, and that's what's different, right? Yeah, absolutely. It's the want to, for sure. So now it's not just interesting. It's, okay, what do we got to do? And here's what we're going to do. And so then the real work that we then are selling, if you will, is not the weekend. That's where all the energy is. But really what we're selling is walking with you now over the next year to help you and put it into practice, because practice results in experience, good and bad, right? But we learn from it, we gain experience, we gain skill, we gain confidence, so that then people are able to turn and go, okay, now I'm not an expert, but now that I know what I know, I can turn and help the next person get started too. Also known as discipling. And that gets us into another 6 months of helping them to have a discipling plan, but then implementing that plan. And so most churches after a year have they're well on their way to a cultural shift because of experience, not just the blah, blah talking, but now they got their own stories. They got real relationships with people who don't know Jesus. They are more and more familiar with the routines of how we support each other in that, with the 5 questions and so forth. And they are usually well on their way to establishing a very intentional network of missional communities among their people out in the community in which God's placed them. So that's a lot more than you probably wanted to know. But anyway,
no, that's really good. I'm just kind of thinking, because kind of a couple of the main questions that I want to have on this podcast is kind of that shift point. When does that transition happen, and what does that look and sound like? Kind of the whole idea of learning and growing and stepping out and trusting that Jesus knows what he's doing in the complexity of everything, as well as that shift from doing mission for Jesus to joining Jesus with him, going, because one of the most affirming things that just God grabbed my attention was when you talk about paying attention to what Jesus is up to. And I probably 3 years ago, I kind of settled on the very simple summation of the gospel for me is Jesus is bent on saving us, and Jesus is always up to something. Though that to me, that summarizes the good news to proclaim, and it's those shifts of recognizing what Jesus is up to and how we do that, and then step out in that place of trust. The sense of being an everyday missionary, more than that, but going on a daily mission trip is just that's a shift in thinking in terms of that invitation, and with that, it caused me to pause in my back alley to talk to the neighbor across the alley instead of just saying, "Hope you get your garden done," and walk away. Because that was the bit of small talk. Ended up, I didn't lean away. I leaned in to what was going on in that conversation, and it ended up being a wide up opening of his life. It's quite surprisingly in that moment, but it was that sense: Jesus is up to something. Pay attention. This is a daily mission trip, and so one of the key questions is, when did you experience that transition from doing mission stuff, programmatic activity, as you said earlier, on mission for Jesus, to on mission with Jesus? And what was that experience like? Whether that was a one-time kind of revelation, or it's sort of all a bunch of different experiences packed into that.
Yeah, well, that particular one was a lesson that was slowly learned, because my personality is one that you jump in and try to make things happen, right? And being the pastor of a growing church, that had really been a pretty solid strategy, being able to not take control so much, but be kind of the catalyst to kind of have an idea and make it happen. And what really was a combination of streams kind of coming together was a combination of the things that we had done for 10 years that had caused tremendous growth started to not work so well anymore, right, even though we were doing them better than ever, right? So my first 10 years of ministry, this is in Michigan where I was first placed, we grew by 1,000 people in worship during 10 years.
Wow.
And then during the next 7 years, even though we had bigger facility, more expertise, more blah, 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 we only grew by about 200 more people over 7 years. Wow. We didn't have the language back then, but the river was moving. And that shift from, we had a number of adult baptisms over the years, but really what we were doing was kind of reactivating disenfranchised, bored, hurt former churchgoers, and when that shift started to be complete in our community, now we were kind of down to the real work of being missionaries in our own community, and that's when we started realizing you can't just go in with kind of a preconceived formula because these folks have already heard all that, and they're like, thanks, but no thanks. That's right. And that put us much more into either a passive role of, oh, well, I guess we're out of cards. They won't go to church with me. Or do you find out, wow, there's a lot more going on in their life if I were to listen. And then you start to realize, holy cow, God's already been messing with them in some remarkable ways. Yes. Right? Likewise, another stream of influence was our intentional and consistent involvement with mission trips to foreign mission fields with people. And again, the idea there that you can kind of go in and make things happen, right? At least that's your presumption.
Yep.
But then you start to go, well, while this is a life-changing experience for us, it really isn't doing much good for them. And when you start talking with the missionaries, they themselves didn't use that language, but they used the language of having to be incarnational, if you will, right? Be with these people, be ready to talk when they were open to talk, to be, working alongside of them, eating alongside of them, so that when the conversations, when they were ready for those conversations. So all that then kind of, clicked on in a, blinding flash of the obvious, like we used that phrase in the second book, that we're not really going for Jesus. And in fact, if I was honest, the going for Jesus had really caused me to be much less active, right? Because, man, I don't want to screw this up. I'm going for Jesus. I got to hit a home run or not even get in the batter's box.
Right.
And that was, for me as a pastor, much less our people, right? And then the other thing was, well, I'm going for Jesus to Guatemala, or I'm going for Jesus to Haiti. Yeah. And realizing, likewise, little different application, but same result, that had very minimal impact compared to, it was doing good and there was good done, but it wasn't missional.
Good done before you see the kingdom at work and before you hear from Jesus. You just go do good, missing those first two missional practices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, we talk with churches and leaders a lot about what we call, we differentiate it between good, better, best. And most churches see mission as doing good, right? So we provide some food or, help, or a clinic, or we go and build something someplace. And that's good. But churches that have been doing that for literally decades now can give you all these amazing spreadsheets of all they have done.
Yes.
But have no
programmatic activity.
But have no names of people, no stories of people that have been led to Christ, because that's not what they're doing. They're all doing good, which is good, right? That's Matthew 25. Nothing wrong. We're good with that.
Yeah.
But if I want to make disciples, good needs to lead to better, which is not just making a difference, but making a friend.
Yeah.
Because in that connection of, let's make a difference, but in the context of getting to know people as individuals, which then leads to make a disciple. That's, of course, the best. So we can kind of fiddle at that programmatically, but really where the most powerful good, better, best progression is in my own community with the people God's already placed around me. Yeah. Make a difference in your neighbor's life, make a difference in your coworker's life, make a friend. And now we're in position to, start to ask them more questions about what they're already feeling, thinking, believing, afraid of. But now we're in the realm of the kingdom of God. We were before, but now they are not far from the kingdom, as Jesus said.
Yeah, that's really incredible. Yeah. With Jesus, recognizing Jesus on the loose in our neighborhood, and getting to that place where, doing good things. There's a lot of gratitude connected to that, but it's that next step in terms of creating a safe place for our neighbor or people that we're doing good for with, can be vulnerable with their fears, their dreams, their heartaches, their disappointments, their deep pains, and all those things, which leads us to that next step in discipleship and bringing Jesus into their lives, or helping them recognize Jesus already at work in their lives.
Yeah, and that's what's really cool is that very thing is what we learn is that we can show that God already has affection for them. And it already has been doing what is necessary for them to have a relationship with him. There is no, he loves you, but, or he'll bless you if, but look how he already has affection and love for you. Yep. Why wouldn't we just go, well, thank you, and receive that, trust that, and then become a part of this amazing work of, receiving love and then offering love, which is really what good is. It's offering the love that we've received, and in any way that becomes experiential, tangible, someone would say, well, that was good, good done for my behalf. And then you start chasing those words through, particularly the New Testament, and my goodness, over and over again, there is this sequencing of grace, faith, and reception of all that, but then the living out, the doing good that, frankly, as Lutherans, we just kind of, because of our laser focus on justification by grace through faith, we got the how we're saved, we forgot the why we're saved, right?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
We got the what we're saved from, we forgot the what we're saved for.
Yeah.
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 Which is the adventure, right? That's the reason we have so many passive, bored, frightened church members, is because we never get around to, well, here's what God's already up to. Let's go and participate. And that leads then to the experiential, fruitful, fulfilling life that Jesus offers us, not just someday in heaven, but immediately, because the kingdom has come here.
It is.
And boy, it's when you see whether they're 16 or 76, people catching on to that, now they really do experience both the fulfillment and fruitfulness that abundant life produces, if we engage it. If we simply know it as a theological concept, are generally thankful for it as something that is really going to be fulfilled someday in heaven, we miss this span called life, where it's a renewable bubbling up every day.
Every day,
and once people catch on to that, now they are self-motivated. They still need the communion of saints, because we have good and bad days. We get stupid. We get sinful.
Yep.
We need help one from another. But now it's not this abstract, weird thing I can't quite get my head around. It's the experiences that we've had over time that now I can go, oh yeah, that really is the way I want to live. So anyway, I'm babbling on now, but
no, that's really good. There's a couple of things that are going on in my mind. Dean and I were just sitting out on his deck after work yesterday, talking about some of the complementary aspects of our character, and I love to theologize and philosophize and think and in abstractions, and Dean is brilliant at application, and and the more we grow with that together, the more adventurous it becomes, as I realize. And it's that spark of adventure, and having fun, which you note in that final benediction in the first book there, in that sense of adventure. And you touched on something that's really key in terms of, sometimes we get stupid, we sin, we falter, we fail, and we feel awkward and inadequate. And what has been some of your experiences of how Jesus has showed up when you thought, oh, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. It worked for a minute over here, but I can't. It's just not possible. And how has God messed with you, or how have you seen God mess with others in terms of bringing them again into the adventure renewed, not just as kind of a second class missionary that has to be forgiven all the time type thing. It's just kind of the sense of joyful newness each day.
Yeah, well, I think when we go back to how Jesus discipled his followers, we have a variety of ways we kind of summarize and categorize that for people, so that they can kind of, look into all the plethora of the Gospels and start to see these, common, simple practices, whether they are the mission practices or the lifestyle practices of Jesus. But in terms of, if we're looking at really the inner reforming, the discipling of his followers, it kind of boils down to just a few things. And, one that's consistent throughout is remembering your true identity, right? That's what Jesus has to do between he and the Father, and that because of that, we now also can remember that we have an identity that's in Christ, but it's the same identity. But then after that, the things that we see Jesus really working on his disciples on, right, so that they can then enter into more of the lifestyle practices that Jesus gives them, is to trust the Father more, get over themselves faster.
Get over themselves, yeah.
Yeah, and be willing to give a little bit, right, of what to just do it, if you will. Yeah. And what that means is that when I trust the Father more, I really can go in without a sense of any agenda but his. Yeah. And so I really have gotten to the point, and I'm not going to say it's 100% all the time, but most of the time I can go into any encounter and really give up any sense of pressure, because this really, I could go in with such pressure, and it's really a waste of energy.
A lot of wasted
waste
energy.
Of emotion. Yeah, because what's going to be helpful to that person is not if I come in looking like a predator trying to make a sale, but someone that truly is, kind of like Mr. Rogers. I'm curious and I care. And that's a trust factor. And then also, the getting over myself means I realize that this may be a whole series of conversations for a bunch of different reasons, but a whole series of conversations. So that's where I really encourage people to think in terms of proximity. Now, your proximity, because of our mobile society, might be 4 or 5 places where you regularly find yourself.
Yeah.
But we really want to invest in those relationships with people who are living without Jesus. And so, great, I have, all kinds of churched and de-churched people that I might know, and I'm going to love them and I'm not going to ignore them. but my priority is going to be those one or two people that are truly living without the grace and truth of Jesus. And so that means I get to kind of get over myself and really look at what, because a lot of these people are not folks I would naturally want to hang out with, right?
Right, yeah.
And so this really does become something that I need to set myself aside for the sake of the relationship. And what that means then is, I'm open to sitting down having a beer. I'm open to, oh shoot, this is not the best timing for me, but there the person is, right?
Yes.
It's serendipitous, but it's also intentional, and it simply positions me then better to, like we say, seek, recognize, and respond. But if I'm not trusting the Father more and getting over myself faster, that's kind of the ongoing training Jesus is. I mean, think about it, from Matthew 4:19 all the way to well into Holy Week, but certainly right up to even Palm Sunday, Matthew 20. He's still having the same irritating conversation about having to let go of themselves and
how long do I have
him.
to put up with this perverse and adulterous generation? That's one of my favorite phrases of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I want to know the tone of voice he had with that. But getting over ourselves.
Yeah. So anyway, those are that is what kind of gets us to that point where we can be what Jesus already says we can be, which is like little children.
Yeah.
Right? I really don't have to have a care in the world. Any problem I have, that's Jesus' problem. You can start to pray, in any given, like us being shut down from being able to have our usual income source from March till now. Yeah. Right? Well, Jesus, you got yourself a pretty big problem as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure how you're going to figure this out, but whatever I can do to be of help. So I'm engaged. I'm not sitting back on my backside, but I'm also realizing that I cannot make things of the kingdom happen.
Yeah.
But I can do what the Father gave me to do. And then through that, he will do what he does, right? So the sowing of the seed, the putting our faith in him, are taking, baby steps.
Yeah.
And that would probably be the other thing to encourage people just getting started, is stop thinking about this as an all or nothing. Yeah. You get one swing at it. No, just Jesus says it's about little things. And so we take baby steps. And so when I'm working with congregations, we are celebrating every time someone has, met their neighbor, right? Well, was there a baptism? No, but now I know the guy's name. Well, that is a win for the kingdom of God. And we're not done, but now we've begun. Yeah. And that's huge, right? And that's really why we keep meeting with folks after the, quote, weekend training, is so that we can help them go, no. Meeting your neighbor is huge, right? Having a neighborhood gathering with 4 or 5 or the whole block, whatever, is huge, right? And what that does is it leads to like what you experienced, right? What you were the story you shared, or like the dear guy I was talking to a church in New Jersey yesterday, and the guy, he's he was, anyway, you don't need to know the story, but ran into this guy sitting waiting for takeout food at the local Chinese restaurant, and had this amazing conversation, and now they are going to meet. And he said, I would have never bothered with even acknowledging this guy previously, right?
Wow. Jesus is up to something all the time in everyone.
I don't know if we put it in a book. I blogged about it once, but that, that the 3 dots that you put at the end of a sentence, ...
I do that all the time.
I guess it has a name. It's called an ellipsis, which is way more grammar than I ever mess with. But anyway, that's where every mission story is really a episode, not a whole, season. Every conversation like that, we just got to remember, is a ... Yeah. And God may never have me pick up this part of the plot again, but it might be a next door neighbor now that picks it up. But your surprising willingness to listen puts him in a different place. I'm making this up, obviously, but
Yep.
you just never know. And that's the fun of, and when you talk with enough people that have come to faith or come back to faith, that's the other thing, the importance of telling real stories in our preaching teaching, because they will often say it was this offhanded compliment or this neighbor that just wouldn't stop, showing me value, that I was valuable, whatever it might be. It's always these little things that often are the things that are the turning point. I'd love it to be that they heard my sermon and bam, it just made a huge difference in their life. And, sometimes that's a little gravy on the potatoes, but most of the time the real stuff is, those actions and words and conversations that you're referring to.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, that's really rich. Yeah. Dean is also a pastor. I'm a pastor as well. So yeah, we all dream about that revelatory, transformational moment that was the perfect time that we planned in our sermon, and everybody goes, wow.
Yeah.
What did you preach last week? I don't know. It's usually the case, right?
I appreciate what you're saying, Greg. It takes the pressure off.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, Jesus, I was faithful in this, and now you take it from here. Of course, I say that now.
No, I have a favorite story about a guy named Tim. This is back in Michigan, and I had lunch with him once a week for months, just grinding through all the questions, and it was pleasant enough experience. And then his schedule changed, and we weren't able to meet anymore, and we kind of not lost track, but did not meet regularly and didn't have those conversations like we did. And all of a sudden, months later, I get an email, out of the blue, that today was the day he woke up and God just made it all go together. And I'm sitting there going, you mean I spent all that money on all those lunches? Kind of like what you're saying, Dean. Yep. And then you get a wake up call. You're like, oh no, this is pretty cool. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so good.
One thing it's been exciting to see in our students is when their eyes get off of themselves and they're becoming more confident in God to show up.
Yeah. And
as they do that, we're seeing them now being able to just be confident in kingdom endeavors. Yes. I can do this, because, and even as we do our small discipling groups, when they're getting comfortable with silence, to ask the really good questions and just let it sit, not rush in to fill the air, but just let the Spirit work in people's lives. And, it's really uncomfortable at first, but then they get confident, okay, God, let's keep it going. And then God shows up. And so it's been beautiful to see these leaders emerge from this. Yeah.
We really appreciate young adults because they often are more easily reformed, rediscipled. They already have friends that don't know Jesus. They already value relationship. They already want to know that God is doing something more than just what we're seeing in church.
They're hungry. Yeah. How do we grow in that place of trusting that Jesus gets it? All of
it. This is so important because this is a huge blind spot for all of our theology. We talk all the time about trust. Well, the only way you build trust is you go out and step out onto out of the boat, right? Yep. So one of the reasons our people don't actually trust God very much. Okay, they believe in God.
Yeah.
They trust Him for salvation, but they don't trust Him.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't have experience in taking those baby steps that require Him to come through, if you will. And so because of that, we end up discipling people to believe the truth, but not trust it. And I differentiate that because belief in it is an action of the Holy Spirit. Trust, to engage it is more of a discipling outcome.
Yeah.
And so the so the way that and that's why what we do is when we are training either an individual or a congregation, which is just more individuals, you can't train a congregation, you're training individuals who make up a congregation.
Right.
We really have 3 discovery assignments that our first training focuses on. It's how to seek, recognize, and respond to Jesus as a daily lifestyle. Because if I'm not looking, I'll never see. And if I'm not looking and seeing, there's no way I can recognize what's actually happening. And if I'm not looking, recognizing, I won't be able to respond, right? But that's that sequence that is baby steps that begins to build up a sense of experiences, right? That allows me to gain more and more trust, more and more confidence. Because not that it always goes the way I want it to go, but it always goes in a way that, wow, who look how he did it this time, right?
If we have eyes to see that, yeah,
and that's where it's simple, but it's so important.
Yes,
and that's why we talk about leadership through the process as clarity, simplicity, intentionality, consistency. Those 4 words, because I need to keep it clear and simple for our folks so that they're like, yep, nope, we can do this. But if we're not intentional and consistent, that won't become part of their growing experience. That won't become that part of their story. And so that's why to be able to help people actually engage that, then their trust, their confidence starts to grow. Yeah. And the other side of that is we want to regularly get together, whether it's just for a few minutes as a church group, or whether it's around the dinner table with our family and talk through how it went. Because I'm going to need some encouragement because maybe something happened that wasn't so pleasant, right? And I need to have a context that goes, wait a minute, let's just see what God does with that, right? Or how can we put our Jesus training into play with that? Which usually means trust the Father more, get over ourselves, and go back and re-engage, especially if maybe we missed an opportunity or even somehow failed or sinned in that situation. So anyway, that's the I think such a simple but important aspect of what we're talking about in terms of going from the inspiring idea to the confidence and trust that we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah, and you touched on something really key. We can do the work of clarity and simplicity when we have good resources and teaching. The intentionality is that next big step, doing things intentionally, and that's where the risk can be involved of awkwardness and mess ups or feeling inadequate or
well, and most of the time the intentionality is not going in with guns a-blazing.
Exactly.
It's going in and reconnecting, seeing how they are, right? It's realizing all the busyness of life has gotten in the way of me reconnecting with that person or circling back around or just going and intentionally checking in with that person. And that's where the consistency helps us to then gain more confidence that the intentionality is actually seen as a blessing. Yeah. If I'm going in to be a blessing to them, most of the time folks are going to be glad to see you coming. Yep. If you're coming in for another jab at the sales pitch, then they're going to start walking the other way as soon as they see you. Yeah. So that consistency, that's where I say it's leadership, because whether it's parents with their kids or a group of peers, one with another, or whether it's you discipling a new believer, the reality is, if we don't provide that intentional consistency, then the growth becomes very sporadic, very hit and miss.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really, it's not formational, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one question here with regards to what has your experience, this is kind of postulating because I've never done this, I don't think, but an experience of where you have maybe been really sales pitchy with someone, or there was tones of maybe a judgment or self-righteousness. Sorry to kind of call on vulnerability right off the bat here, and then you went back and said, I was out of line yesterday when I was talking to you. That was really rude. Or have you had an experience like that where you've had to go on and apologize and seek out forgiveness in this new discipling relationship? Because it would be helpful.
Yeah, I probably not, only because I have, if I'm going to err, I usually err on let's retreat so we can have a conversation another day, right?
Yeah. That's
probably good. Most of the stuff that you're talking about was in the realm of kind of one and done kinds of situations where we went out to do evangelism, if you will.
Yeah.
Knock
on the door.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But I think, even wrapping around what you were saying a moment ago with the woman who lost their father.
Yeah.
What we do advocate, and it's out of Jesus' playbook, but it's the asking of questions.
Yeah.
It's the finding out more about the story, right? And that way, I don't have to get out my Jesus hose and spray them down with everything, because I have no idea what's really wrong. So I'll just take an A to Z approach, right? But caring about them enough, like if you will, a doctor, to be able to diagnose what are some of the symptoms, and even just asking them questions about where does this pain come from, and then most of the time you can have a pretty well-aimed cool cup of water that is seen as, wow, that was really helpful. And even from the standpoint of take it out of the realm of somebody grieving and just into the realm of somebody continues to screw up their own life, right? And you're like, and it's kind of like, helping them to realize that this action, this attitude is hurting other people and really hurting themselves, and being able to help them see that in a way that's serving them, not just going, well, you have an awful way of putting people down and you need to stop. But my point is that the more you get to know them and the reasons or the lack of even clarity on their own self in terms of why we're doing things, that's huge, right? And all that means is we're building a deeper relationship to be able to have that insight and be able to offer them some hope and help, right? Even though it might be, from the law side. But if somebody's got their thumb on the table and they are periodically smashing it with a hammer and they're complaining continually about their sore thumb, you go, I got good news for you. If you stop hitting it with the hammer, it will stop hurting as much.
Yeah, and then we can talk about, why are you hitting it with a hammer?
Yeah, well, exactly.
The thumb. The whole relationship unfolds. Yeah, that's extraordinary. I want to read something. I want to read that benediction, and then I want to just ask you a quick question in closing about, where have you had fun recently? So I'm going to read that so that everybody hears this. So the benediction at the end of your book is, and now it is time to begin your new life as an everyday missionary. No need to be nervous. No need to be afraid. This is what Jesus has been preparing you for. Remember, you're not being sent out for him. you're being invited to come along with him. And besides, you'll have a little help from your friends. So join Jesus on his redemptive mission in the name of the Father, who has been pleased to give you his kingdom, in the name of the Son, who has risen from the dead, and even now is on the loose in your community, and in the name of the Holy Spirit, who has given you eyes to see and a heart to respond to the people Jesus has placed around you. Amen. Now go have some fun. What's one story in closing of your experience of having fun with Jesus on this everyday missionary work?
Discovering here in this new neck of the kingdom where we live, the what's Jesus up to, and we have had to earn the right to be able to sit and talk somewhat casually, transparently with our neighbors. And the real fun is going up to these people that frankly we were getting to know back in July, August, September. Then our travel, and then the winter, and then COVID kept us apart. But it has been a lot of fun coming up to these folks, staying 10 feet apart, but coming up and seeing the genuine sense of affection, which frankly wasn't there months ago.
Yeah.
There was a politeness, there was a cautious welcome to the neighborhood, but now that has all been ripened and accelerated by the Lord during this time. And we now are on the cusp of being able to have people come over, and again, outside 10 feet apart, but to have a glass of wine together and go, hey, we'd like to get to know you better.
Yeah.
And so in a way that is fun, because that's something God has done that we had nothing to do with. It's just now we recognize, wow, there's a interest level there that there wasn't before.
Thanks for listening to the 72 podcast, presented by CLBI. Stay up to date with the newest episodes and subscribe today. For more information, check out the72.ca or email us at podcast@clbi.edu. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, live as disciples and be the 72.